I believe that the Apostle Paul wrote the book of Hebrews. He understood the Old Testament so well. He understood exactly how to present Christ from the Old Testament. That was how he spent his life. But one of the things Paul does is really challenge Christians in the book of Hebrews. And really, when you read the book of Hebrews, you will no longer believe in doctrines of once saved, always saved. You'll understand that you need to be careful. You can fall away. And one of the strong things Paul says is in Hebrews chapter 3, beginning with verse 12. And in this passage, he makes two very strong warnings to believers. He says, be careful then, dear brothers and sisters. So he's talking to believers. He's not talking to the unsaved. He said, be careful then, dear brothers and sisters. Make sure that your own hearts are not evil and unbelieving, turning you away from the living God. There's the first warning. The second warning, you must warn each other every day while it is still today, so that none of you will be deceived by sin and hardened against God. For if we are faithful to the end, trusting God just as firmly as when we first believed, we will share in all that belongs to Christ. Now notice, there's a beautiful promise. Faithful to the end, trusting God just as firmly as when we first believed. So he says, now listen, Christians, you're going to have to be careful because just like the people of Israel turned away from God, Christians can turn away from God. So he said the first warning, make sure that your own hearts are not evil and unbelieving. You know, just like your heart was changed when you got saved, your heart can change again. Depending on what you watch, what you do, how you live your life, the entertainment that you participate in, you can put evil in your heart. And you can put unbelief, rebellion against God in your heart. Depending on the companionship you keep, what you read, what you watch, what you fill your heart with. I mean, please, garbage in, garbage out. And he said, if you're not careful as a Christian and you let your heart turn to evil, remember, Paul says, out of the evil things stored up in our hearts. Jesus said the same thing, out of the evil things stored up in our hearts. You can't let evil take root in your heart again or unbelief. Because the fruit of that is it will turn you away from the living God. You have to guard your hearts. If you do not guard your hearts, one day, you may be looking at people and they remember you when you were a wonderful Christian and you used to stand and worship God and your hands lifted high and, you were in love with Jesus. And you know what? You still go to church and you still go out to dinner with these people, but you have changed on the inside. Your heart is now full of unbelief. Your heart is now full of evil. And in your heart, you're still wanting to hang out with God's people, but your heart has turned away from the living God. You may not have changed on the outside, but you've changed on the insides. Now, the second great warning, you must warn each other. This is something that every believer needs to stay in the face. Get in the face of each other about. You must warn each other every day while it is still today, so that none of you will be deceived by sin and hardened against God. As Christians, you have to understand, you can't hang out with sin and participate in sin and think, well, I'll just ask God to forgive me and it won't have an effect on me. It doesn't work like that. Sin hardens you. Sin deceives you. Sin is the ultimate deceiver. And you just have to get a hold of that truth. So as Christians, we warn each other, stay away from sin. Because sin will deceive you. Stay away from sin. Sin will harden your heart. Your heart changes. You don't understand, but your heart has changed. And all of a sudden, one day, forgive me, on the outside, you still look the same, but on the inside, you're a very, very different person. We sent out a video of Pastor Josh Mills preaching to our pastoral staff one morning on why pastors don't bear fruit. And it's because their hearts have changed. You have to understand, based on the condition of the heart, that's what you bear fruit with. And if your heart changes, there's no fruit. That's why two preachers can preach an identical sermon. They can do everything exactly the same, and one has fruit and one has nothing. It's because on the outside they look the same, but on the inside their hearts have changed. Now, as Christians, young people, stay in the face of each other. You start to see one of your friends, I think I want to go to the clubs. Oh, I think I want to go drinking. Oh, I think I want to go to these places. And, a little bit of pornography is all right. And, telling the green jokes. And when you see a believer starting that direction, warn them. Sin is deceptive. Warn them. Sin is going to harden your heart against God. Don't just take the warning for yourself. Pass the warning on. Sin is dangerous.